Hello everyone, welcome back to another video, and today I'm going to be talking about September's weather. And September's weather is currently looking interesting because we could actually see a period of warm, maybe even verging on slightly hot weather. This could be maybe a September kind of mini heat wave in a way, a few days of kind of warm weather. But on the other hand of that, we could, so this is showing the warm weather here, we could actually see a scenario which might actually be potentially a bit stormy towards the middle or end of the month. And we could kind of see something like this, this picture here, which is showing kind of low pressure systems making their way towards the UK, kind of like bringing some unsettled weather, gusty winds, maybe even a stronger storm. We could also, on another scenario, we could even have actually both of those. So we have to get into the forecast a little bit and see what's going on. So this is the GFS run. This so you can see here the GFS. That's the model. Let me just get this pen ready. And this is what's called the temperature at 1.5 kilometers. Sorry, the 850 HPA temperature. That's the temperature at 1.5 kilometers. And you see these white lines kind of showing the pressure. And you can see here we kind of have this area of high pressure with winds flowing clockwise around it like this. And we kind of have these kind of yellowish colors kind of showing mildish to slightly warm air. But we need to kind of watch this high pressure over the next few days as it kind of changes its position a little bit and moves generally to the southeast in direction. And what happens as we change the position of it is we kind of get the air, instead of flowing kind of like this, kind of from east to west, we kind of get the air kind of changing from east to west, a kind of southeast to northwest, and then eventually even kind of from the south in this scenario. So when we kind of get into these kind of southeast to southerly airflows, we can start to kind of drag up hot air from the kind of the Mediterranean, the North African continent, and that can be an influence on our weather, potentially give a warmer spell. And so if we look at this run, you can see we have low pressure here, so that's got winds kind of flowing anti-clockwise around it, and we kind of have this elongated area of low pressure like this, kind of like a troughing area, and you can see that we have the air kind of flowing up in this sort of direction. But one thing that we need to watch is potentially this kind of low could sort of meander into sort of a position a bit further east, such as kind of the Bay of Biscay, could slightly move into this sort of area. And as you watch like this, what can happen there, or even this scenario kind of moves down kind of west of Spain, west of Portugal. You can see what happens in this scenario. We get a fetch of kind of a longer fetch of air right kind of from over parts of the North African continent, Mediterranean, which kind of drags up that warm air from the south. And in this scenario, we get direct, basically southerly airflow, really kind of the worst of the warm air in a sense. And kind of in this scenario, you'd really get kind of the upper level winds would kind of be pushing this warm air up around this low and into the UK in a sense. And what also might happen is we also might start to see that low moving a bit faster northwards. And as that kind of moves in that direction like this, you can see we also get some of that warmer air properly into the UK. And so we will be kind of looking at some sort of scenario with kind of maybe like a late summery sort of thing. If you look at the ECMWF, kind of a similar model, let me just run back a bit. Sorry. You can see we have that high pressure, same thing, kind of just to the north of the UK, drifting southeast with those kind of green and yellow colours over the UK. But then what happens is you can start to get this area of low pressure. This one is a bit more kind of developed than the GFS, and it kind of moves straight into the Bay of Biscay kind of region and actually develops kind of a new low. Around here. And that in this one, we definitely have kind of quite a strong sort of southerly, southeasterly flow, which definitely drags up quite a warm air mass as this kind of area of low pressure kind of pushes northwards. So that's definitely something to watch. And the actual position of this low pressure does make a big difference, because if this low pressure, instead of being here, is kind of maybe out here, then we're probably only going to see something a bit milder. But if it kind of gets closer to the UK and manages to really kind of draw in that hot air from the North African continent and the Mediterranean, then we could actually see maybe a spell of warm weather. And maybe one of these potential scenarios, this is from the UKV run from netweather.tv, you can see we could maybe see a scenario with kind of the mid to low 20s over many parts of kind of the Midlands, southern, southeastern England, maybe reaching 24 or 25. And I think this scenario might be a bit too low if what the current kind of models are showing plays out. And we could, on the other hand, see a scenario like this. This is still from the same website. This is a kind of the net weather medium range model. This is kind of what I think is a bit more likely at this stage, where we do actually see kind of mid-20s fairly widely across southern England, potentially even kind of to the high 20s, 27 you can see like that, though it probably would extend a bit further north in this scenario. But it's always good to get kind of more background information in a kind of a situation like this. So that's why we kind of look at the ensemble models and the kind of ensembles in general, and that's kind of when like each kind of units like subunit of the model runs together to try and find the average. And this is the ECMWF one, as you can see here. You can see the orange colors are kind of showing above average pressure, and the blue ones are kind of showing below average pressure, and then we have those lines showing kind of the situation at about 500 millibars, which is kind of in the middle towards the upper end of the atmosphere. And because we have a fairly strong signal from most ensemble members for a strong ridge to develop here, you can see that those kind of isobars turn like this kind of into kind of like a ridge shape, and you can see we have those orange colors showing that it's quite likely that we will have quite a lot of ridging to the east of the UK. And that's important because it kind of means that these low pressures kind of slow down a bit as they kind of approach the UK, and also we kind of get that southeasterly and southerly airflow. And then another kind of fairly strong signal here with kind of those kind of blue shades of colours is that we have a low pressure system sitting to the southwest of the UK, kind of near kind of Spain, the Bay of Biscay. And that's another important thing because that has kind of been the main source for dragging up our hot air. And especially if we're kind of getting the low kind of looping like this, then as it moves northwards, this will especially kind of help with the hot air moving northwards. So that's kind of another thing to watch. And so at least from the ECMWF model, we have a fairly good signal of support for this kind of warm solution. And if we look at the kind of the temperature anomalies, you can see that there is a fairly high confidence that we see below average temperatures kind of near Spain, Portugal, from that low pressure system that's going to bring the hotness to the UK. But there is a fairly strong signal as well for quite above average temperatures over the UK. You can see we have those reds showing kind of between 6 to 8 degrees above average for this time of year at that 850 HPA layer. So this is a fairly strong signal again. And if we look at the GFS, you can see the GFS is kind of a bit different to the ECMWF, but we still kind of get that that kind of low pressure scenario with low pressure kind of extending like this, and then sort of kind of it's like a separate low kind of on the southern edge of this kind of area, kind of moves northwards into the Bay of Biscay and kind of drags some air up with it. And there is a not as strong as the ECMWF, but still strong signal for high pressure to develop and bring a like a kind of a flow of southerly or southeasterly over the UK. So there's a fairly good signal from both models. And looking at the same product I just showed you for the ECMWF, but for the GFS, the American model, you can see we have kind of the same kind of signal for kind of cooler than average, kind of near kind of Spain, Portugal, and then kind of warmer than average over parts of the UK. And this isn't as strong a scenario, likely because we don't have as developed a low and kind of a bit further west as well, as you can see here. But this is, again, kind of quite a fair indicator that this has definitely got some kind of deep truth or decency in the scenario that the models have been showing. And looking at the ensembles, this one's for London, I'll show one for Perth in Scotland in a bit. You can see we kind of have those mild air temperatures, and then by kind of the 4th of September, the 5th of September, you can see we have a fairly good pattern. Actually, let me just change the pen colour to yellow. You can see we have a fairly strong pattern that we're going to have kind of an increase in these temperatures, though there is uncertainty to how high this gets. Some kind of ensemble members show it maybe kind of reaching like the 14, 15 level. Some kind of show it kind of staying around the 8 level. Most kind of show it in between maybe 10 to 12, though there should be less cloud than we currently have, so this could be kind of slightly warmer weather, maybe mid to high 20s. And then kind of as we go further along, you can see that kind of uncertainty starts to decrease. So the next part of the video I'm about to talk about, notice here how I have kind of that trend for a bit lower. But also there are a few kind of signals for precipitation during the end of that time. We might have some sort of kind of a thundery breakdown. And then this is the one for Scotland. Same thing. You can see here kind of a trend downwards, and then the warm air in this scenario is a little bit delayed, but definitely is there. We do have definitely a trend for warmer air reaching parts of the northern UK, Scotland, same time with the precipitation signal. So it could be a bit unsettled and wet at times, but there is definitely a signal for warmer air. Now moving on to the next part of the video, which is potential for maybe an unsettled spell of weather, maybe even a named storm or a strong storm. And that's because we have this is the current scenario of the North Atlantic. We have a large, very strong area of high pressure, which is usual for this time of year, sitting out like this. And so we have kind of westerly flow on top of it like that, and then kind of bending around, and then we have easterly flow on the bottom. And it's a time of year heading into peak hurricane season. We have lots and lots of these tropical waves kind of emerging over West Africa and developing into tropical cyclones. And if you look at this region, this one especially, watch how over this run it really starts to develop, and we kind of get a likely what is a hurricane. And what's likely to happen, because we have this high pressure like this, is that this kind of gets pushed around and makes a turn into the open Atlantic. And this is great news for any kind of land areas, because this decreases the chance of any sort of catastrophic impacts like we had with Ida, which is a really bad situation. But you can see it kind of makes a turn to the north. And one thing that will have to be watched is the fact that we have the jet stream kind of across parts of the North Atlantic in this kind of region. And what might happen, as shown here, is we kind of get the warm tropical air being dragged up from the tropics, the Atlantic. Let me just show you on the temperature chart. You can see we have that warm tropical air, those red colors being dragged up, and then that kind of that gradient between the cooler, milder air, and that could actually fuel the jet stream along kind of this temperature gradient and allow some pretty strong storms to develop. As you can see, like this kind of moves towards UK, not as strong as some other model runs. For example, we had one yesterday which really showed this storm kind of developing quite significantly into parts of the UK, actually bringing kind of an early named storm scenario. So that's something that could be something to watch out for, especially because, let me just show you the jet stream chart. Sorry, this is taking quite a long time to load, but we do have the jet stream currently in place across parts of the UK. Actually, forget that. I'm just going to draw where the jet stream is. Oh no, this is not good, everyone. Sorry for this. This is really bad. I'm just going to quickly reload the page. Yeah, actually, I'm just going to move on from this. But what we do have is a jet stream kind of across the northern half of the UK, and that could be driving kind of systems, low pressure systems, into parts of Western Europe, the UK especially. And we have to kind of look at some background signals for that kind of what the models are showing, like we did with the warm weather. And you can see this is called the MJO we're looking at here, and that's kind of shows phases of thunderstorms in kind of parts of the tropics region. This has a big impact on hurricane season, but also the UK weather as well. And you can see we have those yellow lines and these kind of green lines mainly supporting, and also that grey shading, like the kind of the MJ moving into what's called phases 3 and 4. And the reason this is significant is because phases 3 and 4 often bring a kind of spell of unsettled, wet, and kind of more low pressure focused weather into the UK. And this usually has kind of maybe a 2-week delay time. So if we now start to see this kind of moving into phases 3 to 4 over the next kind of few weeks or so, we could see an increased signal or support for low pressure. And another thing that we need to look at is the North Atlantic Oscillation, which is kind of like the temperature difference between, like the pressure difference between Iceland and like the Azores. And so one thing that you can see here is that this red line showing what could happen, it looks like we will briefly enter the positive stage of the NAO kind of the next few weeks or so. And the positive phase, usually because the pressure gradient is kind of like high pressure kind of over the Azores, low pressure over kind of Iceland, kind of get a really strong zonal flow in a positive setup, and that could drive low pressure towards the UK. And looking at something called Dalmatian plot from the ECMWF model, this is kind of the signal. You start to see quite a few of these kind of coloured dots appearing here, and kind of more than usual. You can see most other places there's kind of just a scattering, but there's an increased signal. Even though it's in the long range, we are still picking up a signal of maybe a low pressure system kind of moving over the UK. And if I go to the next one as well, you can see we are showing kind of an increased frequency of these kind of brighter coloured dots over kind of Europe, the Atlantic, the North Atlantic, and that is showing that there is a higher than usual chance that we could potentially see some sort of like low pressure system, maybe with some strong winds, heavy rain affecting the UK. Though, given that, if I just go a few tabs back, oopsies, but Given that it is tropical air we're talking about and a potential tropical system moving up from kind of the Atlantic around this high pressure and then being absorbed into the jet stream, which is moving like this, there is an increased amount of uncertainty. But overall, highlighting the kind of the outlook for September at the moment, we're kind of looking at potentially a warm weather, maybe on a small kind of heat wave type thing, and then potentially something a bit more unsettled towards the middle and end of the month. As you can see here, this would be the 15th of September. Thank you for watching, like and subscribe.